I wanted to say that Sister Claire and Sister Grace, our reflection and prayers this morning and talking about planting dreams for those that we serve are truly, truly at the forefront what our next speaker does. He truly plants dreams for others. Chuck Levesque is the President and Executive Director of DePaul, USA, with about 55 employees delivering service in the Vincentian spirit. Founded in 2009, DePaul, USA is an authoritative voice on homelessness. Over the past 10 years, DePaul, USA has grown from a single transitional housing program in Philadelphia to multiple programs serving homeless men and women in 6 cities across our country. Chuck credits the expansion to the resources and expertise of you as part of the Vincentian family and our other brothers and sisters in the Vincentian family. DePaul, USA seeks to be inventive unto infinity to fill the unmet local needs while collaborating with other organizations. Please join me in welcoming our friend, Chuck Levesque.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I think I wrote that 2 years ago when it was first. So we've grown even more since then. We're now in 8 states. We go from New York to California. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But first of all, I just want to say how happy I am to be with you today and how happy I am to be able to share the work that we do together as a Vincentian family. And I don't think I'm very good at always seeing the face of Jesus in the people we serve. So my hat is off to those who do. But I don't think you can do that if you don't build a Vincentian organization and deliver services in a Vincentian way. So what I want to focus on today is how we're trying to build both a Vincentian organization and a Vincentian response to the issue of homelessness. So DePaul, USA has a pretty simple but big mission. Our goal is to end homelessness and to, while we're doing that, improve or change the lives of the men, women, and now young people who are impacted by homelessness. We're a national organization, nonprofit, and we're affiliated with a parent organization that started nearly 40 years ago in London. And there are DePaul subsidiaries, as we call it, throughout Europe as well as in the United States. So there's a DePaul UK, a DePaul Ireland, a DePaul France, DePaul Slovakia, DePaul Croatia, DePaul Ukraine, DePaul USA. They all are independent charities. We all report to the mothership in London. Next slide. So you recognize those 2 wonderful people on the left. We are an organization that is animated by Vincentian values, by the lives and the works of both St. Vincent and St. Louis de Maryland. Trying to build a Vincentian organization by following 4 strategies. We'll spend most of the time talking about the one on the bottom right, but I want to talk about the other 3. We invest heavily in Vincentian values training and education. Every year, we bring our members of our staff to Chicago for 2 sessions, usually 3 days each, where they learn about Vincent, Louise, the Daughters of Charity, the Congregation of the Mission, the Ladies of Charity. They leave their work behind, they come up, they stay in Chicago. Father Pat Murphy, a CM, provides the training, and they learn about our organization, but also its history, and the roots from which we grow. And then they come back, they usually do this in the spring, then they come back in the fall, and they design a project that they'll implement over the course of the year that reflects these values. Now, the organization has grown significantly in the last few years, but about 4 years ago, 66% of our permanent staff had participated in this training. And our goal is to get everybody trained. Now, we hire any and all, and we serve any and all, but we want us all to have these values. We hire people with these values, but they may not know how to articulate them, right? So we have to give them a language, we have to give them definitions, we have to give them understanding of what they're doing and how they're doing it and why they're part of a larger tradition and how they can draw on that tradition to do their work. So we invest heavily in Vincentian values training. The other thing we do, and part of it is why I'm here today, is we collaborate with other members of the Vincentian family. It's hubristic for DePaul USA to think we're the only ones doing homelessness services. I learned that the hard way when I went to a conference and was trying to get other Vincentians to come on, join the DePaul USA bandwagon. And a lot of nice sisters of charity and daughters of charity told me they've been doing the work a lot longer than I had, in a very nice way. But, so we're all doing these great work, and we can reinforce and grow from each other. And so we try to collaborate as much as we can with other members of the family. So, you know, our largest financial supporters are the Daughters of Charity. We're going to be opening a project or taking on a project that was started by a sister charity in Leavenworth. We work with the CMs as well. We're at St. John's University in New York at Vincentian University. We're at DePaul University in Chicago at Vincentian University. We work with Vincentian hospitals. And this has really been the key to our growth as well, because we know each other, we trust each other, we know that we're going to be on the same page culturally when we go about providing services. I work with the Federation in trying to host the biannual Vincentian Family Gathering, which is another way we all come together to share our values. So we really try to collaborate wherever we can with members of the Vincentian family. The third thing we do, and there's some tension in this one, is I want to create a work home for Vincentian professionals. So if you spend all this time creating Vincentians, why not create a place where they can work and put those values into the world? Now we can do that in our regular lives no matter what we do, right? We can be Vincentian as we're a doctor or a nurse or a lawyer or a banker. But I'd like to bring young Vincentians who are coming into the work world to work for DePaul USA. If they went to Vincentian, we just recently hired people from Vincentian Parish in Los Angeles. You know, they grew up with the charism, they lived the charism. Give them a place to work. Make DePaul USA a place where young Vincentians or Vincentians of any age can come and work. So we have to be mindful of diversity, equity, inclusion when we do that. But I really would like DePaul USA to be a place where people who grew up with the charism or love the charism can actually have a place to work where they live it every day. So that's the third thing we're trying to do. And then finally, we try to deliver our services consistent with these values. So, you know, treating everyone with dignity and respect, leading with actions and not words. It's something I think we do well at. Take risks. So do things that other people won't do and hope that they work out. And when they don't work out, change directions. So let's talk a little bit about the fourth as I tell you about what DePaul does. So DePaul USA tries to do 4 things to help people experiencing homelessness. We try to people overcome the immediate crisis of homelessness, and that's what we do at our day centers in Macon, Georgia, in Little Rock, and recently we just opened in Los Angeles. So that's a place. These are places where you can come in, take a shower, get some food, wash your clothes, but most importantly, engage with a case manager so that you can take steps to move to housing. So we try to build relationships with these men and women so they can transition to lives of greater dignity and independence. The second thing we do is try to help people improve their health. So in Macon, Georgia, we have a health clinic. In the city of Philadelphia, we opened the first medical respite for homeless men. So men leaving the hospital wouldn't go back if they were homeless. They would go back to the street. They would come and stay with us. They would recover. So we'd act like they're moms, if you will, like when you leave the hospital and you go home, someone takes your temp and gives you something to drink, and if you're my dad, you ring a bell. So we try to be that so that these people don't end up back on the streets. And then behind the scenes, the case manager is furiously working to find an onward home for that person who's in the respite. So we're also now building the first medical respite in Middle Georgia in Macon. It will be a facility that can serve 11 homeless men and women at any time who are leaving the two hospitals. So we've raised $1 million to do that and have just broken ground. Third thing we try to do is increase people's economic well-being. And I guess you heard a very good presentation yesterday by Father. I don't come out of the social work world. I come out of public administration and the legal world, and it was really hard for me to learn that not everyone we serve can have a job. I mean, to me that just seems so counterintuitive, right? But the evidence shows and experience shows that there are some people who are so damaged by the experiences they've had in their life or where they came from that they can't regularly show up and maintain employment. So while we try to put people in work, a lot of our work is getting people benefits to which they are entitled. And you know, we're an organization that's big on rights, but we also leaven that loaf with an emphasis on your responsibility. So trying to get people income, trying to improve their economic ability, because even if they have some income, it's a pathway to housing, right? So you have something you can pay some rent at some place. And then the fourth thing, the big thing, is we help people attain, and then a lot of work, sustain housing, right? So get them into housing and then keep them into housing. All kinds of research you can read about how putting people in housing is so much more cost effective than leaving people on the street. So when I don't see Jesus in these people, I see dollar signs in these people, and I say, if we can put them in housing, they won't end up in the emergency room. If we get them to, primary care, they won't end up at the food banks, they won't end up in the court system, and there'll be cost savings to society, and they live a dignified and better life. Next slide. So across the country, we started in Philadelphia, and now we're in Chicago, Macon, New Orleans, Little Rock, Los Angeles, St. Louis, and we'll be taking on a project in Leavenworth, Kansas, and then we've been asked to go to Mississippi to work with people leaving the prison system who are homeless. People in Mississippi who are leaving the prison system often have to stay after their sentences ended because they have no onward address. People who leave the prison system and don't have a place to go are much likely to end up back in that prison system. So we're trying to figure out how to do that. We haven't, so keep that in your prayers that we figure out how to finance that and make that work. But right now we're up to about 20 programs in 8 cities across the country. Last year we served 3,200 people, unique people, and we helped about 500, I'm rounding up, people attain employment or access benefits. We helped 220 people move to permanent housing. That's just people who moved into housing where they can stay forever. We help many more move from the streets to shelter, from shelter to transitional housing, just improve their housing. But permanent housing, that's the solution for 220. You may say, Chuck, that isn't so good. You're serving 3,200, but only helping 200 people move to housing. I have to tell you that it is such a struggle to get people to move up that ladder to permanent housing. First of all, there's a lack of housing where we can place people. Second of all, there are so many people who are chronically homeless who are resistant to housing. We were doing some outreach in Los Angeles and going into a tent camp, and we're asking people, do you need food? And the guy in the tent said, do you need food? Come on in, I have a panini maker here. He had hooked up his panini maker to the grid. This is in a tent on the street in LA, so he can make paninis. Part of me is like, wow, that's amazing. But the other side of it is that he's not going to move to housing. Right? He's got what he needs, and oftentimes he doesn't want the rules, the regulations, doesn't want to pay for that panini maker. So it's a real struggle to move people to permanent housing, but it's what we have to do. So, and then food banks, critical, right? We provide 100,000 meals a year to people in all of our projects. Turn to the next one. You see, we're trying to dominate the Mississippi Flyway with our programs. We opened in LA in April of 2022, hoping to go to Mississippi next year, and we'll be in Kansas next year as well. So what are our goals as an organization? Go to the next one, Rob. We want to develop more housing options for diverse populations. When you work with homeless people, you typically work with men, right? That's the predominant demographic. Men my age or a little older, mostly African American, and that's traditionally whom we have served. But there are women who are homeless, and oftentimes they're accompanied by children. We haven't served that population. In our youth programs, we'll have young people who identify as LGBTQ, but we haven't designed anything specifically for them. We haven't designed anything specifically for homeless people who have disabilities. So we want to continue to grow our program, but realize that we are serving just a small demographic, the largest demographic, but only one demographic of a population. So we want to develop more housing options for diverse populations. We want to expand our inventory. There's an affordable housing crisis in this country, you all know that. So DePaul started with 27 units 12 years ago. We're now north of 300 with many more in the pipeline. And we're doing that in collaboration with other organizations, but we want to develop more housing. Housing is a mixed blessing for us. I mean, it's a lot of responsibility, but we can control the prices, we can control the quality, and we can maintain them so we don't lose them if we own them. So that's why we want to have property, and also it builds assets for the organization so we can continue, and I can turn over an organization to the next director that will be sustainable. Our day centers, that 200 number, we want to move 100 individuals into permanent housing each year in the day centers. We're surpassing that goal, but we want to keep focusing on that. And that requires us to really invest in wonderful case managers, and these case managers must be animated by the incentive values to do their job. And then we created a program that I really love. Don't tell me other program directors. It's the program that serves homeless college students. There are 58,000 by some estimate students who are homeless during the course of a year, college students in the United States. And Sister Claire was part of the group that helped start the DAX program, which began in Chicago. And it's a nice little twist. The name comes from a Daughter of Charity's suggestion, Dax being the city in France where St. Vincent was a student and lived with the host family. When we started working with young people, we wanted to do something in Chicago for young people. And so we trying to fill unmet needs. We were told that in Chicago the big need was beds for young people who were homeless. And our plans fell through at the very end because we didn't get the necessary funding. But someone told us, one of the deans at DePaul University told us there were 50 students coming through her office every year who were homeless. And so we felt called to do something for that population. So we started very simply a DAX program where we placed DePaul students in host homes. So in the houses of professors or the houses of administrators who would take them in. And we'd say just for a semester, but we really hoped it would be for longer, and it was usually for longer. So the kids could complete their degree, and we felt that if they completed their degree, they wouldn't be homeless for economic reasons ever again, because they would have access to the world of work, they would have contact. So from that little seed of our host home program, we then learned from the students they wanted a place of their own. So we rented a rectory on the southwest side of Chicago, and we rented a convent. And last year, someone saw one of our videos about the DAX program and gave us $1 million. She was the daughter of Chinese immigrants to Chicago, who, when she was born, her mother got so sick that they had to give the child to, at that time, what was called an orphanage. She recovered and got to go home, and the orphanage was run by the Ladies of Charity. And so the circle came back, and so they gave us $1 million. We bought a beautiful apartment building on the north side of Chicago in a very nice neighborhood, and it has 7 apartments. Another donor gave us $400,000 to rehab it, and it will open next week with 7 apartments that will house 20 homeless students 10 from DePaul, 10 from the city colleges of Chicago, which are our community colleges, which serve predominantly minority students of low income. And so we're going to mix the 4-year students with the 2-year students, and we'll have 20 students living in this beautiful building. So that's our DAX program, and we have DAX programs now in Philadelphia, which serve 11 different schools in one former convent, and we have the DAX program in Chicago, and we have a DAX program at St. John's University, where the university allows us to rent 2 homes where we can have up to 10. I believe we have 8 students, all women, all diverse, I think they're all first-generation college students. So, program that I love. So we want to grow that some more across the country. So, affordable housing. We are trying to acquire, build, or rent, buy apartments and houses and charge below market rent. So the first house on the left was part of the 13 Houses campaign. I don't know if you heard about that, but that's the Vincentian family's effort to draw historically on the work that Vincent did to create. He got some money from the Crown to buy 13 houses for foundlings and widows. And so in each country around the world, the Vincentian family has been called to create 13 houses for the poor, the homeless. The house on the left, we bought in Little Rock, Arkansas. It was our first attempt at housing. And we bought the house for $15,000. It was abandoned, it was a mess. We fixed it up. And the first person who moved in there was the man whose first name was Vincent. And he still lives there, and he was formerly homeless. He's great, formerly incarcerated, but he's doing well. And then we built 5 of these beautiful duplexes on vacant lots throughout Little Rock. Got the lots for free or for nothing. And then we were able to build, those are 2 units, full kitchen, like a great room kitchen, family room, full bedroom, full bath, 2 units for $100,000. We raised $500,000, not a penny from the government, not that there's anything wrong with taking government money, but we raised $500,000 from the community to build these 10 units of housing. I think one is empty right now, someone just moved out. But these are for people leaving homelessness. They pay 30% of their adjusted monthly income. So some people are renting these for $250 a month. And we've also, taken these empty, negative spaces in the city, these weed-filled lots, and brought life back to them. So it's something that I'm really very happy about. In Macon, Georgia, we're partnering with the Macon Housing Authority, and they're building 82 units of worker housing or workforce housing, and we have raised money for that project. It's part of the respite project I mentioned, and we are entitled to 16 of those apartments. So 16 of the people who are in our day center who are chronically homeless will move into the apartments that are being built there. And those apartments also will be affordable, and will have actually project-based Section 8, so people with very low to no income can still move in there. So we're trying in all of our cities to acquire housing, particularly in cities where suddenly rents and prices are going up. We want to keep doing this so that we can preserve housing. So that's our affordable housing. Permanent supportive housing, for those of you not in the business, is just housing with services wrapped around it. So you can stay there forever as long as you're lease compliant and pay your rent, but you have a case manager, right, who comes every few days to make sure you're taking your medicine, to make sure you're cleaning your house. Our case managers do anything. They'll run you to the grocery store if you need groceries. They'll take you to the doctor. Oftentimes, when people have emergencies, they'll take them to get emergency care. So it's the goal of, we got you into housing, we want you to stay there, because it took a lot of time and a lot of effort to get those 250 people into housing. We don't want them to fall out. So that's our permanent supportive project. The one on the left is St. Raymond, is Philadelphia. That's not the house, but St. Raymond's in Philadelphia. And then in St. Louis, we have 70 units scattered around the city. In New Orleans, we have 30 units scattered around the city. So those are permanent housing programs. We also have transitional housing. That's our first project, DePaul House in Philadelphia. That's now a recovery house, so that's a program for homeless men who have addiction issues. But they're supposed to be there for 6 to 12 months. The goal is getting people ready to move on. We also have a transitional program in New Orleans where people come to us, and within 12 months we try to get them into permanent housing or back into the market. Next slide. Emergency services. Again, I mentioned earlier, we have these 3 day centers in LA, Macon, Georgia, and Little Rock. And that's just to respond to the crisis of homelessness. Sometimes people can be homeless episodically, like something bad happens, they need some supports to get back on their feet. And this is the kind of service a day center would provide. But also, there are people who are chronically homeless who need a place to go. And I was just talking to one of the case managers in LA, and they're just starting. She said so many of the people that we're seeing now in LA, they're not ready to take any steps. They just want to come in out of the heat. It's 85 degrees, it's 100 degrees on the asphalt. They just want to sit, they want to have breakfast, they want to talk to somebody. So, Chuck, if you look at the numbers, it doesn't look like we're doing that much, but we're trying to build relationships and make people comfortable so that they can take that next step, so that they trust their case manager, and so they're willing to take the risk of moving from what they know, which may just be the street or a tent, into some type of housing. So their goal is to build relationship, to give people a place where they feel safe, and then work with them to move forward. Next slide. While you do that, you're busy providing services. So our 2 day centers, top one is Macon, the bottom one is Little Rock. Together they saw 46,000 visits, not individuals, but visits. People come back time and time again. They gave out 48,000 meals, and even during the pandemic, they stayed open. They reduced the number of people who come in, and they did a lot of their services outside. Being in the South, they could do that. For example, we wouldn't have people dine inside, but we'd have to-go bags, so people would come to the door and get their meals and go on. 16,000 hygiene services, that's showers and laundry, and then moved 90 people to permanent housing and helped 237 acquire benefits. So they were very brave during the pandemic. I was able to work at home for a while, and I started coming to the office, but every day they went to work and they were with people. So we really, at DePaul, owe a great debt to the people on the front lines who provided services. Thankfully, the homeless population didn't suffer like we thought they would from COVID. We thought that that disease would just run rampant through the population. And I don't think we know exactly why, but people hypothesize that it's because people had they were immune to a lot of illnesses already because of the way they live. People also were outside a lot, which minimized the risk of contamination and contagion. So thankfully, we only lost one resident to COVID. And that person was living in our house in one of our facilities. We did have staff members, though, who lost family members. We didn't lose any staff people, but we did have staff members who lost family members. Health services, the next slide. We have a medical clinic in Macon, Georgia. Again, providing services to those who don't have insurance. Again, the goal here is to keep people out of the emergency room, and we also try to connect patients with doctors, and if that takes driving people to doctors or to pharmacies, we do that, and then we try to bring in other care, including dental and chiropractic, and we're opening, again, as I said, a medical respite in Macon, Georgia, to help people. And then in our day centers in LA, we'll eventually invite people from USC doctors and students, and in Little Rock, doctors come in and provide services. So it's a good place for people to actually make their first contacts with the health system, unfortunately, and then hopefully get them to some kind of plan or coverage or just care. Next slide is our youth programs. I talked a little bit about this, but I want to come back here because this reminds me that I was in St. Louis at St. Lazare House on Thursday night. We celebrated the 5th anniversary of this program. This program is not for college students, it's for young people who are chronically homeless. So honestly, it's a more challenged population. These are young people who've been on the street at least a year before they come to us, or for 3 years over the last 4 years. So it's a former residence of the Congregation of the Mission, 2 apartment buildings. One is for the students and one is affordable. And we opened with the best of intentions, and it's kind of a low slum 2-story building with balconies. Well, the first few days we operated, kids were jumping off the balconies, breaking curfew, pulling fire alarms, but it's really settled down. And over the past 5 years, we've had 57 young people come through those doors. We lost 4 people to street violence and to drugs over those 5 years, which just shows you the world they live in. But of the 36 who moved on, about 78% moved to permanent housing. Most come with no income. The vast majority do leave with income. And right now, of the people who have income who live there, it's 17, the majority have that income from jobs, which really is exciting for me. So I was there, and the reason I bring this up is that we have a great Ladies of Charity presence at St. Lazare House, where the Ladies of Charity bake birthday cakes for all the young people living in the house. They send birthday cards, Christmas cards. When we set up the house, they raised money for one of the apartments and furnished it with linens and housewares. But we also have great relationships with the Ladies of Charity at St. John's in New York. Our director said that she didn't know where she would be with the program without their help. They helped stock the pantry, the food for the young people. We have also great support from the Ladies of Charity in Los Angeles. When we started, they helped us set up our pantry, get us the supplies. We needed everything from paper towels to cleaning supplies. And they continue to support us both by in-kind donations, but also financially. So you all have been very, very good to us, so thank you very much for that. So St. Lazare non-college students, the DAX program I just mentioned, for college students. So at the beginning I said that we're part of an international organization. That sort of daisy wheel down there gives you an idea of the different subsidiaries around the world that report to DePaul International. And DePaul International is taking a lead because we have a subsidiary in Ukraine in providing humanitarian relief to Ukraine. So the Ukraine subsidiary predates DePaul USA, and they were providing wonderful services across the country in Kyiv, in Odessa, and in Kharkiv. And when the war started, they did not stop operations. They continued to serve, and right now DePaul International is funneling aid into Ukraine that supports about 10,000 people a week. Our staff is still working to deliver services. One of the funnier stories is that at one of the shelters, the director went in and the residents of the shelter had taken over the kitchen, and they were cooking up this big meal, and he was like, "What is going on?" And the people in the shelter said they were making dinner for the new people who were homeless living in the metro in Kyiv. So the homeless people were cooking for the newly homeless, displaced people who were living that were sheltering in the subway in Kyiv. So it's wonderful to be part of this larger organization. DePaul USA has collected or raised over $600,000 for Ukraine assistance. So people in the U.S. can give to us. Honestly, they get the tax benefit by giving to us, and then we funnel the money to DePaul International to go to Ukraine. So we're very happy to do that. And then we get the benefit of learning from their experience. DePaul, Ireland, our biggest charity, has been in operation for 20 years. They've gone through things that we are now going through. They can help us that way. So it's great to be part of a larger organization and to have this international aspect to what we do. And then finally, I'll just tell you a little bit about the FAMVIN Homeless Alliance. This was created to celebrate the 400th anniversary of the charism, trying to get all of the Vincentian families around the world to take actions to end homelessness. The 13 Houses campaign comes out of this movement. And as I said, DePaul USA built the first of the 13 houses, the one in Little Rock. And I think by next year, we'll be up to 76 units of housing that we built, acquired, or rehabbed here in the States for people living homelessness. So in sum, I want to say thank you for listening to me babble on. Thank you for collaborating with us. I always look for new opportunities to do programs and projects. I can't promise, but anytime someone comes to me, we try to be very intentional in trying to fill gaps in services wherever they may be. So I'd be happy to talk to any of you individually about ideas you might have on how we can continue to do more and to do it better. Thank you very much, and I look forward to answering any questions you might have. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
So this is about your clients. I was interested that you said your typical client is an older African-American man. And my question is, you know, women live longer than men. Where are the women?
So women are more resourceful than men. There are no men. So women will do, especially women with children, will do extreme things, good and bad, to prevent their children from being on the streets. So oftentimes they will stay with a man in an abusive relationship so their kids aren't on the street. They'll find family members to take them in, but they will be more resourceful than, in my opinion, than men to stay off the streets. That's not to say we don't see single women, but I think that's a large part of the problem. Yes, ma'am.
I would love to invite you to start up a BBS about your whole call thing. In Gallup, New Mexico, we have so many homeless, and some of them do not want to be helped. There's a guy in Gallup that even told this man who's been on the street over 20 years, I'm going to make my garage into a little apartment for you. He stayed there 2 or 3 days and went back on the street.
Yeah. So,
We need a call.
So Gallup is part of the Western Province of the Daughters of Charity, and Sister Julie Kubasek, the former visitatrix, invited us to come to the Western Province. So we opened in LA, and we're open to doing more work in the West. I've been through Gallup. Yeah, I'd love to go to New Mexico. But what you're saying is not unusual. We had a similar experience in Philadelphia where we put somebody who was living in a car, in an apartment. They lasted a week. We're like, why? And the thing turned out that he was in a drug deal that went bad in an apartment, and everybody was murdered in the apartment except for him, and so he was not comfortable living in apartments anymore. So I mean, I'm not saying that's good. I'm not excusing it. I'm just explaining it and saying that you know there are so many things, and that's what's so hard about homelessness. It's not. You know, it can be for so many reasons, right? I mean, you could be homeless because your house burned down, right? You'll figure that out. You get your insurance, you'll move on. But you can be homeless because you have a drug issue, a criminal background, and you've got mental health issues. So you have to unravel all those strands to undo that big knot, right? And that's what makes it so hard and so challenging, and on better days, so fascinating. But yes, so I'd be happy to talk to you about that as well.
Where do you find these caseworkers?
There are wonderful people in this world who want to have lives dedicated to helping other people. So we don't have a real problem finding caseworkers. I think that the challenge for me is keeping, we don't have a lot of turnover, but people can burn out very easily with this work. So one thing we've done fairly recently is that if you work for us for 7 years, you're eligible for a fully paid 1-month sabbatical. And we fought really hard with our board so that under sabbatical you can do whatever you want. Some people wanted us, well, you should study homelessness or do some volunteer. And we're like, no. If people want to go to the beach for a month, that is fine. So, you know, keeping people, I think, is the challenge. And then, you know, making sure that people have these values, right? They have these Vincentian values and can articulate them. I mean, I think most people going to social work are inclined to our values, but we want them to have the vocabulary, the language, and be able to express it and train others people. Yes, sister.
Does DePaul need permission of the bishop to open a homeless activity in a specific diocese?
What is a bishop? No. With all due respect, no. We're in the Catholic registry. We're officially a Catholic organization. We tell people we're faith inspired. Most people who fund us are drawn to us because of our Catholic identity, and we don't shy away from our Catholicity. But we serve any and all, and when we're talking to people for whom that Catholicity does not resonate, we say that we are faith inspired, and that usually builds the bridge that we need to go forward. But no, we don't ask the bishop for permission. We always would like them to know what we're doing, but we go in and yeah.
We're hearing on the news that there's pending legislation that hotels may be expected in the near future, if they have rooms after 2 p.m. open, that they will be expected to offer them to the homeless. Would you, maybe I'm hearing that incorrectly, but I'd like your opinion on all this.
So it sounds like some kind of local legislation. So hotel rooms during the pandemic were often used in hotels that weren't functioning as hotels or that were sort of not economically successful. In some cities, the city government paid those hotels to make their rooms available for homeless people. The good part of that is they're often physically very well designed for that purpose. They have a bathroom and a bed, but no kitchen, so you can get people into a large number of people into limited space. So they work well, much like convents, I have to say, that have the small rooms. We use a lot of convents. It gets to be a problem, however, if you don't put case management on site, right? Because we need to admit that concentrating poverty does not work. It's caused lots of problems anywhere it happens. So if you're going to put 50 people in a hotel, you need 3 case managers there to check on people every day for the well-being of the individual, to make sure if they're on meds, they're taking their meds, but for the well-being of the property, to make sure they're not causing damage, intentional or non-intentional. So that's my issue with hotels. Some organizations have bought former motels and hotels and used them for housing. I think that works very well. But I think it would take a lot of good management to have a functioning hotel simultaneously hosting guests and homeless people.
Chuck, I was just in LA, and they estimate 25,000 people are homeless in just the city alone. And the lady I was talking to who raises money and is in an organization that helps the homeless, their real problem is the systemic change. DePaul USA and this lady, you're at the end of homelessness. And the problem is the systemic change that needs to happen so that they don't get into homelessness. And that's a massive, massive problem.
So I struggle with systemic change, to be honest with you. I embrace the concept, but I think we have to do things that are not systemic to just alleviate problems, but not lose our focus on systemic change. And what I always came back to is like the educational system not working. So creating an equitable funding system that would fund inner city high schools and suburban high schools equally, that will be systemic change, right? Having a bake sale to raise money for supplies is not systemic change. But in the middle, like scholarships and individual assistance and mentoring, that can change systems for individuals. It doesn't change the entire system. And I think that's in the homeless sector, that's where DePaul fits. We are not changing the entire landscape of affordable housing to keep people from being homeless, but if we can change systems for families, systems for groups of people, I made my peace with systemic change that way. And I want to say, and I don't mean to contradict you, but it's 44,000 homeless people in the city of LA, 66,000 in the county of LA. Something I saw, they are spending lots of money in LA to try to solve the problem, to their credit. But every day they say 150 people, 125 people are housed in LA, but 150 become homeless. So even though they're spending more and doing more, the problem's getting worse. And then right across from our facility, they built 44 units of container-based housing for homeless people. It costs $450,000 to build 1 unit of housing out of containers. So, yeah, so I don't want to work in LA anymore. I'm ready to come to Gallup or any other place where things aren't so expensive. So it's a real challenge.
I house for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, my question, have any of your homeless people that you have helped, have they come back and become mentors or case managers to help the other homeless, since they would really understand
Yeah.
more than anyone, I think, their predicament?
You're exactly right, and there's a whole job description based on that theory, peer advisors or peer specialists. So people with lived experience coming back and working with people. And that we've done that. And then we've had people who've come back and then relapse too. I mean, it's so difficult. But yes, we hire people with lived experience. And they're some of our best case managers. And also, like, I don't always hire someone with an MSW to be a case manager. I mean, some of the best case managers I've seen are just people who are empathetic, have good judgment, right? And good instincts in an emergency. And, you know, you can learn some of that, but sometimes you're just born with that. So some of my best case managers are people who didn't go through the social work programs. They're just people who have a heart for this and have the kind of brain that can work quickly and solve problems. Because that's what social work really is, right? I'm not a social worker, I should be careful, but I think it is, you know, trying to solve problems. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
No, I just wanted to offer that the systemic change piece of this is a big, big part of what we have to be about. And the Vincentian family is very much involved in that. And Natalie and Pat and myself, we work as part of the Vincentian team at the UN. And on December 16th, in 2021, a resolution was passed by the General Assembly. And in that resolution, countries agreed to identify in their countries some of the drivers of homelessness, such as poor education, drugs, mental health issues, etc., and to work on them to alleviate the problem of homelessness. And that was a major project of the Vincentian family at the UN. And this governs, okay, it's a treaty, it's a resolution of the General Assembly to which the United States is a part. And if anybody wants a copy of it to work with their local officials, we'll send it to you. Because honestly, that resolution sitting at the UN is not going to help anyone, even the Paul USA, to establish these programs unless people push their local governments to do this work. And so you can say, but the U.S. signed is a part of this. The U.S. agreed to this at the United Nations, and they see these drivers, and they agreed to look at these issues of homelessness, to measure homelessness, and to begin to show some progress on the issue of homelessness in their countries. And the United States is a part of that, and you need to be the ambassadors that take that from the UN to your local municipalities. And we as a team, the IGH, worked on it, the Ladies of Charity worked on it, the Vincent de Paul, the Daughters of Charity, and all of the Vincentian family has been a part of this effort. And we need all of you also to be a part of this effort in your local municipalities to move this forward and make Chuck's job a little easier.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to say, in general, the chasm between the haves and the have-nots has just gotten so deep. I mean, education is not a part of it, because you have all these kids with degrees that are winding up in their parents' homes because they can't even find a Sawyer home. And then I'm from the Northeast originally, very expensive place to live. California, very expensive place to live. So part of me is thinking, are these people going to just start funneling themselves to the South, areas where the cost of living is less? And are we seeing that? And are we responding to it? This is the way my brain kind of works. Because I don't see in America that it's going to change. Because the people, I know they used to be part of it, the people in power, the people with the money, when they are given more money, will buy back their stocks, they're going to buy a second home, they're going to do all this stuff. They won't hire more people until they see it's going to cost them customers. This is just the business mentality. I have been behind the closed doors and I've watched it all the time. This is just how it works. So the middle class, the lower middle class is just struggling to get that raise, so maybe they can go from renting something to perhaps affording something, because that's the only way you're ever going to build wealth, is to apply a home, which then when you pass away will go on to your children and they'll have a home, which could be 10 times maybe 20, I mean, I'm hearing these amazing stories about people that bought their houses for less than 100,000, and now, maybe 20 years later, they're worth the doubles of millions, you know, a huge amount.
And they're done.
I mean, that's how you build wealth. So I'm just spouting, you know, just my observations.
So can I offer a thought on this education thing? This is what occurs to me. We've got this plan that everybody goes to college, and I went to college, I loved it, it was the right thing for me, but it's not the right thing for everybody. And when you talk about changing our education, I think thinking about the trades, having that available. I had hosted a couple kids from one Italy, one Spain a few years ago when I was in the DC area, and they were on the college track, right? And I remember at first I thought, oh, they're pigeonholing these children, and then I realized, no, they're not. They're recognizing the skills and the desires and where these kids are coming from, and some are naturally going to go to college because that's where, you know, but some need to be in the trades. We need to have that, and we may need to also offer back the mechanics and the home economics and the life skills, and I think some of that might be missing from our education because they're not able to cope. I don't know. That's what I was thinking when I heard education, how to do that.
I agree, and I just want to say that in our work with students, the thing that I found that is disturbing to me is that so many first-generation students who are going to these universities, and I typically am supportive of this for these students, they don't understand the full cost. And it's not explained to them clearly enough when they borrow money. That, okay, you got a scholarship, but that doesn't cover your living expenses. And so I think sometimes, I believe the universities need to do a better job of explaining what people are buying and what it costs. And that would eliminate a lot of problems.
And what it leads to.
Right.
If that choice leads to a job, or is it just some pie in the sky?
Yeah, and 0% of this, and I apologize if we did, but which area do you see the largest increase in homelessness? Is it the older population? Is it the younger? Where do you see it increasing, or is it increasing?
Up until recently, the number of homeless people across the country was declining, very slightly, right? And there was an uptick during the pandemic and the like. So some of the I think we're seeing more people in camps, people who won't go into shelters, living on streets that we didn't see before. We're seeing a bit more in terms of families, but it's really varies from locale to locale. But I think the problem that is beginning to get on people's radar are the young people, the college students who, you know, traditionally they've couch surfed, they stayed on people's couches, and so people don't really see them. But that problem is sort of coming to the fore. So we see more and more of that, and more students trying to find assistance coming to our doors. Anything else? All right, thank you. I think I ran over, so thank you very much.
I think that this just makes all of us stop and think. When you hear about all these other people and these 66,000 homeless and 44,000 here, you know, you can just think there, but through the grace of God goes I, and how it can happen so quick. There's just so many stories that I know of that it can happen. I've heard of school teachers that are now living on the streets and things. So I think we should thank God every day and ask Him what's His plan that He wants us to do. I think we should ask that every day. I'm awake this morning. What do you want me to do today? Maybe you might not like it, but you do it anyway.